Hi friends, I'm Miranda. I never imagined that my homemade lasagna would be the first crack in the foundation of my marriage. I'm in my early 30s, living what I once believed was the American dream. A beautiful home in the suburbs, a successful husband, and enough time to indulge my passion for cooking. That was me, or at least it used to be. My husband Jack is the quintessential corporate hotshot. Tailored suits, a corner office, the whole 9 yards. When we first married, he couldn't stop raving about my cooking. "Miranda, this pot roast is to die for," he'd say, or "Babe, your apple pie could win awards." Those compliments were music to my ears. But lately, something's changed. It started subtly, a raised eyebrow here, a lukewarm "it's fine" there. Then came the comparisons. My mom always adds a pinch of nutmeg to her meatloaf, he'd mention, or "don't you think the pasta's a bit overcooked? Mom's is always al dente." Jack's mother, Evelyn, well, where do I even begin? She lives just a few blocks away, and her presence looms over our home like a dark cloud. Sunday dinners with her are a master class in passive-aggressive criticism. Her sharp eyes assess every dish I place on the table, her comments thinly veiled but cutting all the same. Then last night, something happened that made my blood run cold. As I served dinner, a roasted chicken I'd labored over for hours, I noticed Jack out of the corner of my eye. He was hunched over his plate, phone in hand, snapping a photo of the meal. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just proud of my efforts. But later that night, I couldn't sleep. I crept downstairs for a glass of water and there was Jack's phone on the counter, the notification light blinking. I knew I shouldn't, but I looked. In his messages, I found a whole album of photos. Every meal I'd cooked over the past month, sent to one recipient, Mom. The latest message from Evelyn read, "Oh dear, the chicken looks dry. Remind Miranda that a proper brine would fix that. I'll send over my recipe." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All this time, every lovingly prepared meal was being secretly photographed and sent off for expert review. The betrayal stung deeper than any criticism Jack had ever voiced. I wanted to confront him, to scream, to break something. But instead, I went back to bed, my mind spinning. What else was he sharing with her? How long had this been going on? And why wasn't I enough? As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I realized this was about so much more than just food. It was about respect, trust, and the slow erosion of my self-worth. But what could I do? Jack was my whole world, and the thought of rocking the boat terrified me. So I did what any good wife would do. I smiled, pretended I hadn't seen a thing, and vowed to try harder tomorrow. I'd wake up early and make Jack's favorite breakfast. I'd prove to him, and to Evelyn, that I could be the perfect wife they clearly thought I wasn't. But deep down, a small voice whispered that something fundamental had shifted. The perfect facade of my marriage was cracking, and I didn't know how to fix it, or even if I wanted to anymore. Days blurred together as I threw myself into the role of the perfect wife. But nothing was ever enough. My world shrank to the four walls of our home, each outing an opportunity for Jack to point out my flaws. "Miranda, stand up straight. You're embarrassing me," he hissed at a work function. "Honey, maybe skip dessert. You're getting a little, he added, patting my stomach, though it was still as flat as ever. Each comment chipped away at me, bit by bit. My phone buzzed with another missed call from Sophia, my best friend. But I couldn't bear to talk to her, couldn't bear to admit how far I'd fallen. One rainy afternoon, I caught my reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, my hair hung limp, and a permanent furrow had etched itself between my brows. When had I become this shell of myself? From downstairs, I heard the sound of Jack and Evelyn's laughter drifting up, light and careless. I crept to the top of the stairs, listening. "I swear, Jack, I don't know how you put up with her," Evelyn cackled. "Remember when she tried to make beef Wellington? What a disaster." "Mom, be nice," Jack chuckled. "She tries. It's kind of cute, really, like watching a kid play house." Something inside me snapped. I stumbled back into the bedroom, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps as the walls seemed to close in around me. My vision swam with spots, but I fumbled for my phone and dialed the one number I knew by heart. "Sophia," I choked out when she answered. I need help." "Oh my God, Miranda, where have you been? I've been so worried." As I broke down, years of pent-up emotions poured out. Sophia listened, her calm voice anchoring me. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "This isn't normal. What Jack's doing? It's abuse, Miranda. You need to get out. But where would I go? What would I do? I whispered, terrified. First things first. I'm texting you the number for a therapist, Dr. Larson. She specializes in domestic abuse. Call her, Miranda. Promise me. I stared at the number on my screen, a lifeline in a sea of despair. With shaking fingers, I dialed Dr. Larson's office. A warm voice answered, and I took a deep breath. Hi, I think I need help. As I made the appointment, a tiny spark of hope flickered in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could reclaim my life. The sterile, white walls of Dr. Larson's office felt like a blank canvas, waiting for me to paint my story. I sat there, fingers twisting nervously in my lap as the compassionate psychologist studied me. Miranda, why don't you tell me why you're here? Her voice was gentle, encouraging, and slowly, the floodgates opened. I poured out years of pain, manipulation, and self-doubt. Session by session, Dr. Larson helped me peel back layers of toxic patterns I'd been blind to. Your worth isn't determined by Jack's approval or Evelyn's standards, she reminded me. What did Miranda love before all this? That question hit me like a lightning bolt. Cooking, not the stressful performances for Jack and Evelyn, but the joy of creating something delicious just for myself. One evening, I decided to make my favorite childhood dish, my grandmother's apple pie. As the warm, familiar aroma filled the kitchen, Jack walked in, his nose wrinkling. What's that smell? You know I prefer Mom's pecan pie, he said dismissively. For the first time in years, I didn't scramble to please him. This is my grandmother's recipe, I replied, my voice steady. I'm making it for me. The look of shock on his face was almost comical. Emboldened, I reached out to my estranged sister, Olivia. Jack's subtle manipulations had driven us apart. With Olivia's support and Dr. Larson's guidance, I slowly began rediscovering who I was. I've missed you so much, Mira, Olivia said, embracing me. I always knew that jerk was no good for you. I threw myself into activities I'd long forgotten, a cooking class, a book club, and even sketching out plans for a dream cafe. At home, the tension grew thicker with each step I took to reclaim myself. Jack's composure began to crack. Since when do you talk back to me? He snarled one night after I refused to cancel plans with Olivia. Since I remembered I'm a person, not your puppet, I shot back, surprising us both. But the real bombshell dropped on a rainy Tuesday. I had stopped by Jack's office to surprise him with lunch, a peace offering, or so I thought. As I approached his door, muffled giggles drifted out. Oh, Jack, you're so bad, a woman's voice purred. What would your little wifey say if she knew? I froze. My blood turned to ice as I opened the door to find Jack entangled with a leggy blonde, Natalie from the rival company. Miranda, Jack jumped up, his face pale. This isn't, I can explain. But I was done with explanations, done with excuses, done with Jack. I turned and stormed out, adrenaline coursing through my veins. By the time he got home, I was waiting with divorce papers in hand. What's this? He sputtered. Freedom, I replied, my voice steady. For both of us. His face twisted in rage. You'll never survive without me. You're nothing. I stood my ground, thinking of everything I had uncovered about myself in therapy. No, Jack. I'm everything, and it's time I started living like it. As I packed my bags, my eyes fell on my sketches for the cafe. I had lost years to Jack's manipulation, but my future was now mine to shape. I walked out of that house with my head held high, leaving behind the timid shell I had become and embracing the strong, passionate Miranda I was rediscovering. The day I signed those divorce papers felt like a rebirth. Jack's face was a mix of anger and disbelief as I walked away with a fair settlement and my freedom. But I didn't look back. My eyes were fixed on the future, a future I would build from scratch. Opening day of my cafe, Miranda's Haven, was a whirlwind. The smell of freshly baked pastries filled the air as I nervously watched the first customers trickle in. My fears melted as smiles spread across their faces with each bite. Word spread quickly, and soon Miranda's Haven became the talk of the town. Food critics raved about the cozy atmosphere and mouth-watering dishes. But the real joy came from the regulars who found comfort in my little cafe. As the business thrived, so did I. Gone was the insecure woman Jack had molded. In her place stood a confident, radiant Miranda, living life on her own terms. I heard through the grapevine that Jack had married Natalie. Poor fool, I thought, knowing exactly what kind of future awaited him. Months passed and the cafe's success continued to soar. Then, one rainy afternoon, a disheveled figure stumbled through the door. It took me a moment to recognize him. Miranda, Jack slurred, reeking of cheap booze. You gotta help me, Natalie, she took everything. Between hiccups and sobs, he spilled his story. Natalie had played him like a fiddle, manipulating him into signing over his assets and business shares. Now, she was gone, leaving him broke and broken. Please, Miranda, he begged. I've got nothing left. I looked at the pitiful shell of the man who once controlled my life, feeling a strange mix of pity and vindication. I'm sorry, Jack, but your problems are no longer my concern. As if on cue, Evelyn burst in, her usual haughty demeanor replaced with desperation. Miranda, darling, surely you can spare some money for family. I laughed, a lightness filling me as the last ties to my old life unraveled. Family? You made it clear I was never good enough to be family. Please leave. You're disturbing my customers. They shuffled out into the rain, and I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. The next morning, I opened the paper to see Miranda's Haven had been named the city's best cafe. I celebrated with Sophia, Olivia, and the wonderful friends I'd made, watching them laugh and enjoy the life I had built from scratch. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Jack in a fast food uniform, staring longingly at the joy and success he'd lost. He had chosen his path, and I had chosen mine. What about you? What would you have done in Miranda's shoes after discovering Jack's betrayal? Would you have confronted him immediately or played the long game like she did? Your experiences matter. Share them in the comments. If Miranda's journey resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more compelling stories of triumph over adversity. Remember, your voice could be the one that changes someone's life.